Hello, BookTube and BookTube friends. Welcome back to my channel. This is Glenn, and this is Glenn's Bookshelf. And this is my wrap up for Victober. Earlier in the month, I read Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfeld Hall, and to wrap up the month, I read Thomas Hardy's The Woodlanders. And you can see the Kindle cover of that book there. I actually listened to this book on audio. About 90% of the book I caught via audiobook. It was read by the actor Samuel West, who I have heard read, who has narrated other books that I have listened to, and his narration was really or at least one of the draws to choosing this book as part of my Victober, and also the fact that I was able to download it from Audible for free. So that was also helpful. And to give you, if you're not familiar with this book, as I wasn't before Victober, I will give you a short synopsis that is included with the Audible, that is the Audible summary. It says, set in the Dorset landscape familiar to Hardy novels, The Woodlanders concerns the fortunes of Giles Winterbourne, whose love for the well-to-do Grace Melbury is challenged by the arrival of a dashing and dissolute doctor, Edred Fitzpiers, when the mysterious Mrs. Sharman further complicates romantic entanglements. Marital choice and class mobility become inextricably linked. So that's the summary of the story, and the summary captures four of the main characters, that being Giles Winterbourne, Grace Melbury, the doctor, Edred Fitzpiers, and the mysterious Mrs. Charmond. There is also, I would say, the Grace's father, the Mr. Melbury, plays a pretty critical and central role in the story as well. And I have not read much of Thomas Hardy. I know that his most well-known book is Test of the D'Urbervilles, and that book was assigned to me during my undergraduate years. I assume that I read it. I don't really remember much from it, but other than that, I had no familiarity with Thomas Hardy. I was just looking for books to read that were drawn from the Victorian era, and for various reasons, The Woodlanders by Thomas Hardy kind of offered itself as a viable option for me. And I'm really glad I read it, really glad I listened to it. It's a story that didn't pack a lot of power until really the end. And I think maybe part of it was that I did listen to most of it by audiobook, and there are some strengths to that approach, for reading, for listening to the classics, for getting acquainted with the classics. But I think there are some drawbacks too. And one of the drawbacks was, in general, in choosing to listen to a book as opposed to read it, there is a greater tendency, I think, for details to get lost. I tend to listen to audiobooks when I'm driving in my car, so it's kind of understandable that there would be some features that I missed, and there were things that I picked up when I read about the final 10% of the book from my Kindle, but it ended up leaving a very strong impression on me. Like a lot of Victorian literature, there is a kind of love triangle here. There are some class issues. There are issues of marriages poorly chosen or chosen without much of a background of the people knowing each other, and that in some ways this was a similar book to The Tenant of Wildfeld Hall, which was very concerned with marital choices and the problems stemming from not not having had sufficient time to know one's prospective partner, and perhaps making marital choices based on class divisions and class expectations. And so that that dynamic plays a role in the Woodlanders as well. And I don't want to. I'm going to leave this mostly spoiler free. I don't want to say anything that would spoil anyone's reading of the book, and as you enter into the book, waiting to see who Grace marries and what the outcome of that is, and how the various characters go through their lives, and what the impact of these marital choices are. But I will say that it's a very affecting book. It's very atmospheric. Apparently, as the summary said, Thomas Hardy bases a lot of his books kind of in this Dorset area, and it's very, very rural. And so the setting of the book is almost as important as many of the characters. And again, when I got to the end of the book, the way it wraps up, there's some unexpected things that happen, which kind of threw me a little bit. And the book takes some turns I really wasn't expecting. And in a way, it comes to a kind of bittersweet ending, but it left me feeling really left me feeling very fulfilled, and thinking that perhaps reading some more Thomas Hardy is going to be in my future. I have been wanting to get more into the classics in the last year or two, and particularly into getting into Victorian literature. I kind of have ambivalent feelings about Charles Dickens, and as one of the main authors of the Victorian era, and I just have spent the last couple of months trying to decide what Victorian books I wanted to read, and I think I ended up with one of the Bronte sisters' books and one of the Thomas Hardy books, and I found both of those very satisfying. So I think that I am going to continue to read from those authors, and even though Victober comes to an end today, as the date I'm recording this is Friday the 31st, Victober lives on. I anticipate continuing to read Victober literature. I am about halfway through Wuthering Heights. Again, I am reading this or encountering it via audiobook, and the narrator I think is very strong, but again, I kind of recognize that I think I am missing some of the power of the book by not giving myself over to reading the physical copy, or at least reading the words of the text on Kindle or some other e-reader. So I suspect that I will end up reading this book, reading the physical copy of the book in its entirety at some point, and very likely that I will end up reading the last 20 to 25% of the book, reading the physical copy, which I do own. So I anticipate at some point shifting from the Audible version of Wuthering Heights to reading the text. But already I can say that it is a slightly different book than what I thought it would be based on other people's commentaries, and I was a little hesitant about reading Wuthering Heights. Even people who love the book admit that they don't like the characters, that most or all of the characters just do not have, or are not redeemable characters. They're unpleasant characters, and so I was very hesitant about jumping into Wuthering Heights. But even though I think those descriptions of the characters are valid and are true, the story has still been accessible and enjoyable, and I don't think that has proved a deterrent to finishing my reading of the book, and so I anticipate being able to come back to another video and talking about Wuthering Heights, which is one of the best known books of the Victorian era. But with that, I want to close out this video. Thank you for watching, and I welcome you to come back to another video, which I hope to post soon. But thanks for watching. Bye-bye.